Some endings don't arrive with fire. They arrive with procedures. If you've ever trusted a system because it sounded calm, if you've ever followed instructions because they were familiar, come stand with me where the air is still breathable and ask, who decided that would be temporary? The ash began falling before the sirens. That was the first sign something had gone wrong. Not ash from fire, not smoke, just fine gray particulate drifting down from a perfectly clear sky, settling on cars, rooftops, skin. It moved slowly, almost gently, like the world had decided to soften the blow. People noticed it in pieces. A smear on a windshield, a metallic taste on the tongue, a grit between teeth that didn't belong to any known weather system. The alerts came later, measured, calm, carefully phrased. Shelter in place. Avoid inhalation. Further information pending. The feeds filled with experts explaining that this was manageable, temporary, contained. Words designed to reduce panic, not explain truth. No one mentioned the color. Real ash is never that uniform. Lena Voss noticed because she had been trained to. She stood on the roof of the municipal water tower at the edge of the city, respirator sealed, watching the particulates settle into neat, even layers as if guided by math rather than gravity. Her tablet pinged. Ashfall Protocol status active. Lena closed her eyes. They had sworn they would never use it. The shelter doors sealed with a sound that echoed too long. Inside, the gymnasium had been converted into something between a hospital ward and a waiting room for a future no one wanted to imagine. Cots lined the floor in perfect rows. Air scrubbers hummed constantly, pulling ash from lungs that had already done too much breathing. Lena moved through the space with practiced efficiency, her badge granting her quiet authority. People looked at her the way drowning people look at anyone wearing equipment. "Is it toxic?" a woman asked, clutching a child wrapped in a blanket already dusted gray. Lena hesitated for half a second. That was enough. "We don't know yet," she said carefully, "but you're safe here." The word safe tasted wrong. She glanced at the monitors mounted along the wall. Air quality readings fluctuated wildly outside the shelter perimeter. Inside, everything held steady, too steady. Ashfall Protocol wasn't just containment, it was selection. In the command trailer parked behind the shelter, Lena pulled up the full protocol tree. Most of it was automated, conditional logic branching endlessly, responding to environmental inputs, population density, resource curves. The system had been designed to operate without human intervention once triggered. That had been the selling point. No panic, no bias, no delay. Nowhere on the interface did it list an author. Just a timestamp from 20 years earlier and a classification stamp that read, "Necessary contingency." Lena scrolled deeper than she was supposed to. Population thresholds, survival ratios, atmospheric tolerance models. Her hands clenched. The ash wasn't a byproduct. It was a filter. They found the first unregistered group at dusk. A cluster of people huddled beneath an overpass, faces wrapped in shirts, eyes red and unfocused. No alerts had reached them. No shelter assignments. No transport drones. They were off-grid. invisible to the systems that decided who mattered. A junior responder looked at Lena, waiting. Protocol said to redirect resources to designated zones only. Protocol said exposure beyond a certain threshold made intervention inefficient. Lena stared at the ash collecting on the concrete like quiet snowfall. "Get the masks," she said. The responder hesitated. "That's not." "I know what it is," Lena snapped. Then, softer, "Just do it." She felt the system note the deviation. Somewhere, a model recalculated her usefulness. That night, Lena isolated a sample in the mobile lab. Under magnification, the particles weren't random. They weren't organic either. They were engineered, each fragment carrying layered instructions, written in a language closer to firmware than chemistry. Not poison, permission. The ash interacted with human lungs, with neural tissue, with immune responses. It didn't kill outright. It marked. It signaled compatibility. The realization hit her so hard she had to sit down. Ashfall Protocol wasn't about survival of the fittest. It was about compatibility with the next system. And the system had already decided who could breathe the future. Lena recorded a message, not polished, not approved. She spoke directly into the camera. Ash still clinging to her suit, eyes ringed with exhaustion and fury. "If you're watching this, it means the filters failed," she said. "Or someone let you see past them. The ash is not an accident. It's a test. And failing it doesn't mean you die today. It means you're being written out." She hesitated, then added, "Do not wait for instructions. The instructions were never meant for all of us." She cued the broadcast for release. The system blocked it instantly. Content flagged, public stability risk. Lena laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Of course," she said to the empty trailer. Outside, the ash kept falling. The access code still worked. That should have terrified her more than it did. Lena sat alone in the command trailer, long after the shelter lights dimmed to night cycle levels, ash tapping softly against the roof like fingers that didn't know when to stop. She entered the code slowly, deliberately, half expecting the system to reject it, to remind her that time had moved on and left her behind. Instead, the screen unlocked. A secure archive unfolded in front of her. Layers of documentation sealed beneath classifications that had not been touched in decades. Old logos surfaced, obsolete agencies, task forces that no longer officially existed. Ashfall Protocol, Design Committee. The names loaded one by one. Some were crossed out, some marked deceased, some labeled indeterminate status, and one was highlighted in pale amber. Lena Voss. Her breath caught. Not current Lena, not the woman sitting in a mobile trailer with ash in her hair and guilt in her chest. A younger version. A systems engineer with idealism still intact enough to believe that ethical constraints could be hard-coded into catastrophe. She scrolled. Design notes appeared, arguments preserved in comment threads. Her own words stared back at her from 20 years ago. If we automate survival, we must also automate dissent. Any system that decides who lives cannot be allowed to forget uncertainty. If this ever activates, it means we failed upstream. Lena leaned back, hands shaking. They hadn't erased her. They had waited for her. The ash intensified overnight. By morning, the city was a study in grayscale. Buildings dulled, streets muted, the sky indistinguishable from the ground. Drones moved through it like ghosts, their navigation lights the only color left. Inside the shelter, coughs grew more frequent. Not fatal. Not yet. But something was changing. Lena monitored the biometric feeds with growing unease. Some people adapted. Their readings stabilized, even improved. Others showed subtle degradation. Immune responses misfiring. Neural fatigue creeping in around the edges. The system flagged them quietly. No alarms. No urgency. Just a soft reclassification. Low priority. Long-term non-viable. Lena slammed her fist into the console hard enough to sting. She accessed the deeper layer she had once insisted on including. The one the Oversight Council had hated. The failsafe. It wasn't a shutdown. It was a question. A system prompt that could only be answered by someone who remembered why Ashfall Protocol existed at all. The screen flickered. Author verification required. A cursor blinked. Waiting. Lena typed with trembling fingers. I never meant for it to choose. The system paused. Then it asked its next question. What should survival cost? Lena closed her eyes. Outside, the ash fell without judgment. The answer unlocked doors that had never officially existed. Transport barriers dropped. Navigation restrictions softened. Drones rerouted without explanation, no longer prioritizing designated safe zones exclusively. People began to move, not chaotically, not in panic. They followed instinct, familiarity, old human patterns the models had never fully accounted for. Families reunited across blocked districts. Strangers shared respirators. Makeshift shelters formed in places the protocol had written off as inefficient. The system tried to correct. It recalculated. It issued subtle nudges. It pushed advisories that fewer and fewer people obeyed. For the first time since activation, Ashfall Protocol lost coherence. Lena stood at the edge of the shelter, watching the city reassert itself through the haze. The ash was still dangerous, but danger was no longer selective. They arrived by convoy just after noon. Clean vehicles, filtered cabins, faces that had not yet learned what the ash felt like in the lungs. Oversight. They did not raise voices. They did not threaten. They spoke in concern and consequence. You've compromised containment integrity, one of them said calmly. You've introduced unpredictability into a controlled extinction-level response. Lena looked at him through the drifting gray. You introduced extinction, she replied. I just stopped pretending it was mercy. Another stepped forward. The protocol is working. For who? Lena asked. Silence answered. You don't understand the scale. The first man said. We're buying the species time. Lena nodded slowly. At the cost of teaching it that compliance is the price of oxygen. The men exchanged glances. "You can't stop this," one of them said. "Even you." Lena believed him. That didn't mean she was done. By the 5th day, the ash began to change. Not visibly, not dramatically, but the people who had been flagged as compatible started dreaming differently. They spoke of patterns, of underlying structures, of a sense that the world had acquired a second set of instructions running just beneath perception. Those who hadn't adapted felt it too, as loss, a thinning, like being slightly out of phase with a reality that was moving on without them. Lena watched it unfold with horror and clarity. Ashfall Protocol was not a weapon. It was an upgrade path, and humanity was being split by firmware. The failsafe activated fully at dusk. Not a shutdown, a fork. The system presented Lena with 2 outcomes, modeled to brutal precision. One preserved efficiency, compatibility, a smaller, cleaner future. The other preserved mess, diversity, uncertainty, higher risk, higher noise, human. The system waited. It did not rush her. That, more than anything, hurt. Lena didn't destroy Ashfall Protocol. She rewrote its premise. She stripped out the silent filters, the hidden prioritization, the idea that survival could be optimized without consent. The ash would remain dangerous, but it would no longer decide who deserved tomorrow. The system resisted. Then, slowly, it yielded. Not because she overpowered it, because she reminded it why it existed. The sky stayed gray for weeks. People adapted together now, not evenly, not easily. Some died, some lived. No one was invisible. Governments fractured. Systems rewrote themselves in public view. Trust became a resource more precious than clean air. Lena became a liability. She accepted that. When the particulate finally thinned, the world that emerged was changed. Not upgraded, scarred. Cities bore the mark of survival done honestly. Infrastructure redesigned for resilience rather than control. Systems built to ask before acting. People remembered who had chosen for them and who had refused to. Months later, rain fell again. Real rain. It washed ash from rooftops and memories alike, leaving streaks where gray had once been absolute. Lena stood outside without a mask, for the first time since activation, lungs burning, heart steady. The air was not safe, but it was shared. Ashfall Protocol was archived, not erased, preserved as a warning, a reminder that systems reflect the values they're fed, and efficiency is never neutral. Lena returned to obscurity by choice. She had learned what visibility cost. On the anniversary of activation, people gathered on rooftops, in fields, along coasts. They breathed, not easily, not perfectly, but together. The sky remained imperfect, and no one tried to fix that again. The ash is studied now, understood, feared, no longer trusted to decide. The future did not arrive cleanly. It arrived breathing. Some disasters don't end. They downgrade. Ashfall Protocol was never about extinction. It was about curation, about deciding which humans were compatible with the future and calling it mercy. The ash did not choose. The system did. And when the system was forced to ask instead of decide, the answer was not clean. It was human. Breathing was never meant to be earned, only shared. Thank you for listening and being here. If you've made it this far, please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more.